Well, I want to turn now to something which I count to be very good indeed, and that is I want to read some extensive excerpts of the history of Martin Luther at the time of the 16th century Reformation, which are taken from J.H. Merle-Dobbin's History of the Reformation in the 16th Century. This book was a bit of a sensation, I understand. In Victorian times you can read about Merle-Dobbin being invited to the Metropolitan Tabernacle to speak in Spurgeon's autobiography. Merle-Dobbin was at that time very keen to state that his first name wasn't Merle. He's actually John Henry, and his surname is Merle-Dobbin, a double-barreled surname. So I guess people must have been calling him Merle. But essentially, he was one of those who was converted in the Second Reformation in Geneva under the wonderful work which Robert Haldane did at that time. And for me, this book on the Reformation was very important. It was the first book I'd ever read on the Reformation, and I read it at the end of my time as a student at St Andrews University. I'd been a Christian for 4 years by the time I read the book, and it completely changed my outlook on everything. It gave me a three-dimensional view of church history and of where we came from and how it is that we have the gospel and the Bible today and how it is we have our freedom today. And it started an adventure in books then of reading more and more on church history, which I have done for many years, because this shows us just how God has intervened in history. In fact, God is the God of history. It's all his story. But this book particularly completely moved me. And to give praise and thanks to God, I should say, it completely moved me to give praise and thanks to God. But the history of Martin Luther and that story of what happened to him at the time of the Reformation is almost like the Mount Everest of the church history that one reads. It's so crucial, it's so foundational and pivotal to our modern church age. So we haven't come from nowhere. We're not a church. It doesn't. I think sometimes we can be in church and we think, well, I'm a Baptist and the Baptists have already existed, or I'm a charismatic and the charismatics always existed, or Church of England, or whatever. But all churches have histories, and there is a history of the gospel in the world, and there is a history of the gospel in the United Kingdom, which goes back right to the first century, obviously. But there were remarkable events that took place in the 16th century, and remarkable things happened when Martin Luther discovered that great doctrine of justification by faith alone, in Jesus Christ alone, according to the Bible alone, by the grace of God alone, to the glory of God alone, what we call the five solas of the Reformation.